Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jackie and I am the owner and maker here at the Denwood Designs studio. Today I'm so excited to be sharing with you a tutorial on a corset tumbler. So with Valentine's Day coming up, I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to showcase this one. And so I will walk you through all my steps from start to finish. And as always, I will link in the description box below all of the products that I've used. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, here is a list of supplies you're going to need for this tutorial. You're going to need some satin black spray paint. I use Rustoleum 2x satin in Canyon Black. You're going to need Rustoleum 2x clear gloss spray. Eileen's Tack It Over and Over. And I dilute mine half and half, so 1 part water to 1 part Tack It glue. You'll need Mod Podge. You're going to need some bias tape. What I have is single fold black and it's 1/2 inch wide. You'll need a strip about 6 to 7 inches, black thread and a needle, and you're going to need some hook and loop closures, the same style as what you see on the back of a bathing suit or a bra strap. Some jump rings. You will need 14 of them in total. These are clamshell hook bead covers. A permanent marker or some form of marker to be able to mark your holes. A fabric measuring tape. This is a 5-minute epoxy, 2-part, and it's a Gorilla Glue brand. You'll need some lace ribbon. You'll need some pliers. I prefer to have a needle nose style and then this one with the broader head. Glitter today that I will be using is a black, and in that black I mixed Diamond Dust by Cat Glitter Factory, as well as the Cat Glitter Factory Candy Apple Red. You'll also need a cordless drill or drill of some sort with a 9 64 or 9/64 drill bit. So here is a fully prepped tumbler. It is sanded and spray painted matte black and fully dried. And this is the Tack It that I'm putting on here now. So you're going to want a nice decent coat, top to bottom, long strokes. And again, I just have mine mixed 1/2 and 1/2, 1 part water to 1 part Tack It. And you're going to cover your entire cup with this. Don't forget to do the bottom. And then you're going to need to let it dry. You can put it in front of a space heater, you can do it in front of a fan, that works as well. But you just want long, even strokes. When it's dry, it dries clear, but it is tacky to the touch, which is what you want. So we're going to apply our glitter using the Tack It method, and there are lots of other tutorials out there in using the Tack It method. But you're going for full coverage here. In the black. It looks silver on the screen, but under epoxy it does come out more black for sure. And the Diamond Dust is just added because most blacks don't actually shine under epoxy without some form of additive to it. So we're just going to go ahead and cover the whole thing. And again, don't forget to do the bottom. And tap it off any excess once in a while. There we go, and we'll just do the bottom here real quick. And then once we're done that, We just use fingertips. If you have rings, you want to make sure you remove them if you're going to use your whole hand. And you're basically just going to burnish the glitter onto the cup. So it does scrape some glitter off, and that's exactly what you want. So you want your cup to be nice and smooth at the end of this process with all excess glitter removed. So you'll tap it every once in a while, and you'll just do this probably 3 or 4 passes around the cup, and that's usually enough to have it all done. But again, it's by feel, so if you still feel that there's some grit under your fingers, you'll just want to keep doing this process until your cup is quite smooth. And this makes the epoxy part pretty easy too. So again, if you do have a ring, you'll want to make sure you remove it or just use the palm of your hand like I'm using here. And don't forget to do the bottom. So now that the cup is fully done, it is dry now, it's not tacky to the touch. So we're going to take our bias tape, and I have attached the hook and loop closures at 1-inch spacings and about 1/4 of an inch or halfway on each side. You'll do the hooks on one side, the loops on the other. Then you're going to thoroughly coat the back of that, and you're going to apply Mod Podge thoroughly to it and then place it onto your cup. So I did it pretty close to equal distance between top and bottom. And you really want to make sure you have a nice thick coat of that Mod Podge on there so that this adheres to the cup really, really, really well. And you do want to blot off any excess, but we are going to be applying quite a bit more here to the cup as we go. I cut a strip approximately 6.5 to 7 inches in length, and that's just the look I prefer. I did want a large part of this cup covered. And then I cut a nice little V notch in the top and again in the bottom. And we're putting Mod Podge at the top like that in that V pattern just to make sure that we don't get any fray from where we cut the fabric. And then we're just going to go all the way along the sides and make sure that we really get that Mod Podge on there and get this fabric adhered to the cup. We don't want any epoxy going under it and lifting it. And so we're just going to repeat this process over and over until we feel like we've got really good coverage on there and it's not going to go anywhere. And wipe up any excess. So don't worry if you get any on the fabric itself. This stuff will dry clear. But you really want to get under that, especially at the bottom and the top there. And then just push it down really, really good. So we're just going to go all the way up and down the cup a couple of times here, ensuring we've got really, really, really solid coverage. You really want to take your time with this part. It's a little bit of a tedious process, and I think overall this cup is a little bit tedious, so a lot of patience is required here. So just wipe up any excess. I just used a dry piece of paper towel. Don't worry if you do have a little bit of glitter on the paper towel after you've done this. You're not going to wipe any of that glitter off your cup, so you don't need to worry about that. And you just want to make sure it's a dry cloth, whatever you're using. You can use a coffee filter as well. I just prefer to use paper towel. Then I'm just using the stick end of my paintbrush and just really mashing down that bias tape. Just really making sure it's pressed down into that cup. So we'll let that dry for a few hours. I think I did overnight. And now we're just going to take a fabric pencil or a chalk pencil, even a white pencil crayon will work just fine. And from the very top corner, this is where we're creating cleavage, if you can imagine the way a corset is worn. So the top part here is just basically our cleavage. So we're just creating a little rounded part from the top corner out about 1.5 inches roughly. You want it to be quite even on both sides, so you'll take a look at it from a little bit of a distance and go off of which side you like the best. But your ends need to end pretty close to the same spot. And so now you're just going to find, I used a couple of containers or a ribbon, a spool of ribbon that worked. So you're just going to try out what works for you. And you want your pencil to line up here basically with where that, that curved line finished. And you're just going to draw a straight line all the way around the cup. And that will end at the other side as well. So you'll see here when I'm done, it was hard to do this without my arm getting in the way here. So, and then I'm just basically tracing over this line all the way around the cup. And you're going to be applying your secondary color of glitter here. So that's why it's important. You need to be able to see these lines quite well for yourself. You're creating a template basically. And there. And then we're basically going to be doing the same thing off the bottom as well. And so on the bottom I had just different spools of ribbon that created the height that I needed. And again, we're just going off of that point on the very bottom, off that bottom point of the bias tape. And we're just drawing a straight line all the way around the cup. And then same thing here, I'm just darkening the line for myself so that I really make sure I know what I'm looking at. And then corsets, as we know, get laced up the back. So next we need to draw the lines for ourselves where we're going to be placing the lacing up the back. So I made sure that when I put my cup down on the cradle, it was exactly in the center groove so that I know I've got the middle. And then I worked off of kind of that pole that I've got my cup, like the turner arm that's in there. And I'm going to measure across the back center 2 inches. And it's right off of that top line. So I made a mark at the 3-inch line there on my fabric tape. And then I went 2 inches to the left over to the 1 and made another line for myself. And that space between the 1 and the 3 is where the lacing is going to go, if you can imagine that from here. So then I just used a triangle, kind of like a T-square, I think is what it's properly called. I could be wrong, but I'm going to find that line on the one side and make sure that my square is lined up really nice and flush to the cup. And we're going to go from that top line all the way down to the bottom line with our fabric pencil. And we're going to do that on both sides. And you just really, again, want to make sure that you trace over that line really, really well so you can see what you're doing. And again, do it over on the other side, all the way down. And because my T-square wasn't quite tall enough to do all the way up, I just had to extend the lines here for myself up to the top. And there, you'll see them here, I'll show you. And at the bottom, we're going to create just a little bit of a flare out to kind of resemble hips. So now that we've got our lines on, we're going to take our Mod Podge here and we're going to carefully coat the cup in that line segment that we've created for ourselves. So you want to make sure you get right up to the line and take your Mod Podge right over that line so you don't have to worry about, you will not see it under the glitter, so you don't need to worry about trying to remove it or anything like that. And again, Mod Podge dries pretty quick. If your space is quite warm, it'll dry a lot faster. So you may find that once your Mod Podge, once your glitter's been applied using this method, you may have to do another layer just because it may have dried. So I go all the way up along the bias tape and cover that whole area. And now we're going to go right over everything again. And now we're going to take that Mod Podge and we're going to take it right up to the hardware. And you really want to take your time here and make sure you keep that line nice and straight, but you don't want to go over that hardware either. but it needs to be a nice straight line all the way up. And just have a quick look and see if you've got any areas that look like they're drying up. Go over them really quick. And then go ahead and apply your glitter. So again, I'm using the M&Cat Candy Apple Red. Is my absolute favorite red color by them. And this just has such an amazing sparkle to it. So once you've got your glitter on there, you want to take a nice fluffy brush that's dry, doesn't have anything on it, and just brush away very, very gently any excess glitter, especially out of the hardware. We really want to keep that hardware area clean. And then you're just going to go ahead and repeat that process on the other side. So now our corset's taking a beautiful shape. You can see where the lacing's going to go. And we've got it all beautifully covered. So we're going to seal that with the Rustoleum 2x gloss seal, gloss spray. And I usually did about 2 to 3 covers with that. I mixed up some epoxy off camera. I think I did about 10 milliliters. I didn't need that much, but I had some other projects kind of on the go here. But you want to mix up enough right now that what you want to do is just really work it into this bias tape. And with your glitter nicely sealed, it's not going to move anywhere, so you don't have to worry about that. But you really want to make sure you get it to soak right into that fabric all the way down to the cup underneath and all around the hardware. We really don't want any of this lifting. So really take your time here. This is not a quick process by any stretch. And just really work it into each little section. And again, I sealed my glitter 2 or 3 times because I knew that I'd be working pretty diligently into this area, and I really just didn't want to bring any glitter into that black bias tape where all the closures are or anything like that. I want to keep that really nice and clean, and that black really just pops. And again, right up at the very top, you want to make sure that's really sealed so that you don't get any epoxy going under that and lifting any of it. And so once that's done, you're going to take your torch really quickly and lightly, pop any bubbles, and then you're going to let this dry for approximately 2 hours. And once you've gotten to that, I mixed approximately 30 milliliters of epoxy from here and coated the cup completely. So you want to make sure you get all the way up to the top and around that rim and work your way all the way around and into those, into that hardware as well on the front. Just really taking that opportunity to make sure that it's all in there really, really, really well. And we're just going to cover the whole entire cup. And we're going to do this and we're going to let it dry for 4 to 6 hours with the epoxy that I use. And then we're going to do what's called a flood coat. So after your 4 to 6 hours, you're going to come in and you're going to do another coat of epoxy, and you're going to let that cure for the full 12 hours after. And once you're done that, you're going to repeat the process again. So you're going to do another layer of epoxy, which will be your 3rd layer. Let it dry for 4 to 6 hours. And after that, you're going to apply a 4th layer to this epoxy using the flood coat, and then let that cure for the full 12 hours. We really need thick epoxy on this because we're actually going to be drilling into this cup. And yes, that scared me, but as long as you've got a really nice thick layer on here, it's not going to be an issue at all. And we're not drilling all the way through that epoxy, but we really want to make sure that we've got enough on there that we're not going to crack it and we're not going to compromise the seal. So just coat the bottom really well. And then you're going to take your torch again, any bubbles, and you're going to quickly pop those with your torch and just let it spin untouched. I've got a nice even layer on here now, starting to look really, really good. And I didn't film the other layers of epoxy. I'll just walk you through exactly what I did, which was the 4 full coats. So I hit it with my torch, and then I just let it be for 4 to 6 hours. So now that we've got the 4 layers of epoxy, I went ahead and I attached the hardware on one side off camera, and I'll show you exactly what I did here on this side. So you want to make sure that you're working right off of where the closures are on the front so that you're lining them up with the loops for the lace on the back. So I use this 5-minute Gorilla Epoxy. It sets up really well in 5 minutes. It's pretty immovable after about 30, and then they say it's fully cured after 24 hours. So this is where you're going to need your jump rings. Again, you'll need approximately 14 of them depending on how many closures you have on the front. And then these are the clamshell bead cover, or bead clamps, I believe is what these are called. And I just picked them up at Michael's. I think there's 150 of them for maybe $5, something like that. So you want to close these all off. They come opened. So this is where I just used a pair of needle nose pliers and just clamp that bead down on top of the other bead. So it makes basically now a whole round bead, and then you can see that hook off the side. And that hook is what we're going to hang the jump ring off of, and then the lacing is going to go through those jump rings. And this is where you'll need your drill, and again, that drill bit size is 9/64. And you can practice doing this in a piece of wood before you really start into your epoxy, just to give you an idea of basically how deep you need to go. So you want to measure approximately a 1/4 inch to the inside of that that back piece of where you've got your where I've got the red glitter. So I go off of the front and line up my tape with the center of the hook and loop, and then I went over to the edge by where the number 1 is and measured in from that approximately a 1/4 inch, and that's where I made my dot. And I think I had to adjust it here just slightly. I didn't quite go far enough because I think I did do it again, yeah. So again, just off of the center, I'm marking from the center of that hook and loop on the right, and then coming over to the left-hand side, I'm measuring into the red glitter approximately 1/4 inch. I'm going to do this all the way up the cup. So you want to measure in a 1/4 inch, but you want to make sure you're really lined up with that front, because if you're not, it will look funny with the lacing. So we do this all the way up. And you don't need to worry about this marker, although if after you've drilled you still have some marker lines or dots on your cup, just a Q-tip with a little bit of 99% rubbing alcohol will do just fine to get rid of it. Mine just wiped right off, so I didn't have to worry about that. And there we go. So now when we drill, again, it's minimal pressure, and we're just creating an indent for that pearl or for that bead to sit into. We're not drilling all the way into the cup. Okay, we just want to make a nice little indent for that bead to seat right into with a little bit of epoxy on the back of it. And the best way I could recommend is get a small scrap of wood with that drill bit and your bead, and just practice a couple of times so you can actually get a feel for how deep or how hard you need to push, and how deep it needs to go to get that achieved look of where the bead needs to just sit in there. You don't want to be denting the cup, you don't want to be going all the way through and into the metal, and you don't want to go through all the layers of epoxy either. So I had my epoxy already mixed up for when I got this done. And just to keep my hands clean, I just grabbed the hook part with a pair of pliers, and then I just dipped the back end of the bead into the epoxy. And then I set it into the cup, and that epoxy is already getting quite sticky, which is exactly what you want. Okay, and you want that hook facing into the center of that black space, because that's where you're going to be hanging the jump ring over to feed the lace through, and that'll make sense here in the next step. So for now, you're just going to go ahead and apply all of these beads with the hook facing out the right way. And again, if you need to adjust anything, you do have a working time here of probably I would say a good 15 minutes, and sort of beyond that, you're compromising the adhesive. And you really want to make sure that all of those beads are out nice and straight, or all of the hooks, excuse me, are out in a really nice straight line. And the better you can seed those that way right from the beginning, the better. I got a little bit of extra glue here on the side, so as long as you get to it pretty quick, it comes off not too bad. So again, yeah, you just want to make sure that all of those hooks are facing out in a nice straight line. And just have a quick look at it here and see if there's any mini adjustments you want to make. So I can see a couple right off the bat that I needed to fix here. So just straighten those out really quick. I want everything to be as nice and flush as possible. So we're going to let that dry for approximately 30 minutes, and then we're going to go ahead, now that they're set, and hang the jump rings off the ends of the hooks. And the reason we want to let this dry really well before we do this part is because when we go to close those hooks shut now on top of the rings, we don't want to be popping that bead out of the little hole that we've created for it there. So we really want to make sure. And this is where I really like that broader head plier, because pushing down these hooks with the really tiny needle noses was absolutely less than ideal here. So, and this angle wasn't very good for me either here, so I just did change. You'll kind of play around a little bit and see what works best for you. So I just made sure that the ring was down far enough and it wasn't going to get in the way of the clamp, and you want to just make sure you fold that hook over so that ring can't come out. And you're just locking it all in. And then the final part from here, I let it dry overnight, and then I went ahead and laced it. Now, I didn't film the lacing part because I feel like there's so many different ways that you can lace things, and everybody's got their own preference. You could have done lines straight across. I just did a simple lacing from bottom to top using a 1 meter strand of lace ribbon that I picked up at Fabricland. I picked up it in red, and I hung a couple of the clamshell beads off the bottom of that, and that's it. That's the end of the tutorial. So I hope you loved this. I hope it taught you a few things, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and hit that bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos.